Okay, so finally we get to start learning a little bit about React Native. So when we create a native application the way we just did, we get a little bit more control, much more control in what's happening in our applications because we have access to, the Android, the iOS, which is pretty much the iOS code of the application, and a lot of more things. That's why we're going to use this method. Now, with the Expo, we only get the app.js, but now we get, for example, the index.js. So this one is going to be now the main entry of our application. So, for example, if you go to the index.js, we are importing the app registry and we are pretty much registering a new component, and this is where we start our application. So it's going to be using pretty much two different things, just two arguments. The first one is what we're going to be rendering when we start, and it's the app.json, the app.js, sorry, which is where we get our text. And then it needs a name that comes from app.json, and this is where we define the name of the application. Pretty simple stuff, don't worry about this. For example, of course, now we know that this one is the first that kicks in, and the first component that we want to render is the app.js. Now, notice that this one looks like React, right? Because it is React, we are still running React for web. And that's the cool thing about this. Now, we get a bunch of things right here, very weird things. I'm just going to delete this as well, delete the props, and I'm just going to leave it like it is. You can do export default class. Some other people, they like to do export default at the bottom, and you can still do that, and it's going to work. All right. One more thing with the another thing, with the simulators. If you go to the app simulator and you try to reload with the Android, you can do double tap on the letter R, and it's gonna reload the application. I just delete something I didn't need it to delete. Let me just delete this. There we go, because of course I deleted some of the variables, but that's okay. Let me go back to the simulators. I'm gonna reload it again on the Android, and of course we get it. You need to double tap the letter R, and for the iOS it's a little bit different. It's Command R and it will reload. Good, man. So we get some other features with the simulators. I'm not gonna do a lot of. We're not gonna explore a lot of this right now. But if you type on the Android device Command and the letter M, you're gonna get some options right here. You can do hot reloading. Whenever you make a change right here, it's gonna automatically reload the application. I don't really want to do that. For example, you can debug JS remotely. Right now on this version, the debug.js remotely, it's a little bit buggy. It was working. It seems like with this new version of native, it has a little bit of problems. So I'm not going to run from here. I'm just going to show you what's happening with this. So on the iOS simulator, to open these options, which is pretty much the same options, is Command and D. And you get pretty much the same options. So if I do debug.js remotely, this is going to open a tab in your browser. And it says, of course, React Native JS runs a web server. Well, that's okay. If we open the inspect and we go to console, we get access to a console. So now if I do on our application, I just do a simple console and then log. Simple console log, just like for web. Hello. And I reload the application, we're going to get it on the console. So we can inspect what's happening on with your variables or maybe functions. We can run the console. We have some other tools that are much better, like for example, the standalone version of React Developer Tools. And for this one, we need to do some downloading and installing of the tools, and it's really slow, the download. We're gonna do this later when we reach the Redux part of the course. Right now, we don't need all of this. But when we reach to Redux, we need a way to visually see the state. So we're going to use this one. But right now, you don't need to worry about this. We need to learn a lot of things before we go to that part of the course. Don't worry. So let me, of course, if you close the debugger, it's trying to reach the debugger, but we closed it. You need to do Command D or Command M and stop remote. So It's not going to attempt to connect to the debugger anymore. All right. Okay, so this is pretty much done. On the next section, we're going to start with the components we have available to, show something on the screen. We have tons of components. Of course, we are not going to cover all the components, but we're going to cover pretty much all right? So let's go to the next one, and we're going to start with the views and the styles. So let's